Hey guys, good evening. I'm going to do something real quick. This video right here that says former 33rd degree Mason reveals the darkest secrets of Freemasonry. I've known about this for about a month, where I put together that he ends up saying that the children in the Mason Lodge are raped on the altar in the middle of the lodge, and he says that in Utah at the Mormon temples, the higher up leadership raped the children inside on the same altar inside the Mormon Lodge, which is a Mason Lodge. And so Bethel's Alabaster Prayer House being a Masonic lodge, and their altar is where the globe Earth is at. So I was just explaining this to Kim Carter, who's one of our Reading locals. This is the altar for Freemasonry inside the middle of the lodge. Okay, see the multi-pointed star and the altar in the middle. This is Super Mario Brothers, and it shows the star and the altar. Well, it's basically that's the middle of a lodge. This design right here from Super Mario, okay, is this right here on the floor inside a Mason Lodge. This is inside Bethel's Alabaster Prayer House, and this would end up being the altar inside the middle of a Mason Lodge. This building is designed as a Mason Lodge without the square bricks and all that stuff. The inside is designed as a lodge. Now, I have a personal friend that I've known since 1995 that went to Bethel and was installing the alarm system inside this building, and told me he could hear children screaming from underneath this building. Now, the History Channel, this thing about the Laginas and their wine cave, History Channel is owned by Patty Hearst. History Channel is owned by a lady that lives on Mount Shasta, where the Great White Brotherhood of Light, the fallen angels, have their meetings. The top of Freemasonry meets in the same town, and I used to live there, and I used to have my antique shop there. But these guys right here have, the same way Bethel has the pyramid on top of the building, and then the globe earth, and then the altar, these guys have another version of that.
And here he is.
So, if my understanding is right, and this part is hypothesis, if somebody was really hearing children screaming under the building, this wine cave is directly connected to the same design attributes from the Templars that would make it so that we can go and find an entrance to the underground cave using the alignment of the sun rising on June 30th.
Incredible. Okay, I want you to do something for me.
Okay.
I want you to stand right there.
Okay. I'm an acorn. You can't kill me. You know that.
No,
right?
I can't kill you. No,
What is going on?
No, but there's some interesting things here, and it begins with this. This is what we affectionately call the oculus.
You two are the two coolest people I've ever met in my life.
Come on. Well, what is it you're looking at, Manny?
I'm trying not to stand on a Templar cross, Marty.
You know, I'm not going to say all the reasons that that's there. I just thought it was a nice symbol. You know, it's a symbol, it seems to me, of good things, really.
To me, you know, the Templars are a real mystery, just like Oak Island.
We did a lot of design here to try and tie this back into history. You know, I like that. I think it's neat. And one of the first things is, see this scribe line here?
Yes.
If you walked along that line due east,
Okay.
you would walk right through Bordeaux, France, and northern Italy. So the two best.
Oh.
Yes, we're on the correct latitude for making grapes. So there's all kinds of features here that tie into history just because it would be fun. I mean, anybody can build a wine cave, but why not build a fun wine cave, right? And an interesting one. And for instance, we had the opportunity to align this cave, those big doors at the end open. On June 21st, the sun rises directly there, one time per year. Solstice, the solstice. And it shines directly down this, lights up the wall behind, and we get some people in here. And
Wow.
For me, and I'm sure for you, you remember sitting under the oculus in the Pantheon in Rome.
absolutely.
That's what this, to me, I mean,
You know, you're right. You're right. Exactly right. This is a mini Pantheon with the Oculus, and it's a dramatic building.
yeah, it was awe-inspiring to stand under it as you just experienced right now.
It's incredible. And it's hard, you're right, not to think of that standing here. I also have to ask this, because the fans would kill me if I didn't.
Yeah.
Beyond the kind of metaphorical and emotional meaning of this Templar cross, can we read anything else into this?
Well, I'll give you this. Behind you, right behind you, there's a time capsule buried there that Alex and I put in.
Oh, this little
That little, yeah, we did that ourselves.
I don't know that any of the rest of this is important to the Bethel part of raping children. So let's go back to this star logo is on the floor. 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 And that's the altar. Now, listen to what that 33rd degree Freemason says about what happens on that altar. Because we have a playlist. If you come over here to the playlists, you come down here to Pedophile Pastors Club. Right here, Pedophile Pastors. Remember that this is a Masonic altar. This is a Masonic altar. This is a Masonic altar.
Certificate. He also, so he gave us 2 words of advice. First of all, he said, if you really want to keep pulling in, like the whole thing about the camel getting its nose into the tent before you know it, the whole camel's in there. So I wrote the Church of Satan, which at that time was in San Francisco. I became a member, a first degree member, and then later on I went through some exams and studies, and I became a warlock, which was a second degree member of the Church of Satan. And this also, I should say this because this is critical. This Eli guy, the Grand Druid down in Arkansas, he gave us 2 words of advice. First of all, he said, if you really want to understand Luciferian energy, you need to join the Freemasonic order. And he himself is a 33rd degree Mason. He showed me this little certificate. He also told me that if you ever felt like we were in deep spiritual trouble, that I should join the Mormon church. Because it was a church that had been started by witches, for witches, that we could hang out in and pretend to be nice. You know the image of the Mormon. They're straight, nice, wonderful, all-American people.
We have a playlist that's called Mormons. It is everything that I've been able to find online that proves that Freemasonry started the Mormon group.
Happy families and white picket fences, all that. But secretly, they believe almost the same doctrines the witches believe. And we can get into that if you want, but anyhow. So he gave us that advice. Again, this was in the early 70s. So I joined the Masonic Lodge, became a Master Mason. At the same time, I was a Satanist and a witch. And only our inner circle of the witches, and we by this time we initiated over 100 witches. And only our inner circle knew that we were also Satanists. And we were continuing this, and I finally figured out that there was a deeper level of Satanism. And I got in touch with some of them. Again, there was no internet. We had to do all this by mail and whatnot. And there was a group in Michigan called the Order of the Black Ram, which was like more hardcore satanic stuff. There was another group in Chicago called the Brotherhood, and I got involved with them because they were closer, because Milwaukee's just up the road.
Bethel's Brian Johnson at his house has the church that's called Goat Lord Farms, and Goat Lord is Baphomet worship for the 32nd degree Freemasons. Freemasonry is a religion that's based on the Kabbalah. Bethel's School of Supernatural Ministry is a Kabbalah institute. They are teaching the doctrine of the fallen angels that Scripture says we are not to learn.
About 90 miles from Chicago, and I got really, I sold my soul to the devil. That's how deep I got into this stuff.
Yeah. Before we actually get to that part, I want to make sure to take some time to talk about Freemasonry, because Freemasonry is very rare to actually talk about, to talk to Freemasons, because it's something you're not supposed to talk about. So it's kind of an opportunity while I have you here, to kind of, for me personally, learn also for the people to kind of have knowledge about what Freemasonry is. You said that you became a Master Mason. Can you explain how the degrees and the lodges are set up in Freemasonry so people actually understand what we're talking about?
Well, the basic thing is what's called the Blue Lodge. And that consists of 3 degrees: Enter Apprentice, Fellow Craft, and Master Mason. A lot of Masons never go any further than that. I did, but basically, it's like an initiatory process. The requirements are you have to, at that time, now I think I joined in 75, you had to be a man, freeborn, of good report, and well-written. Do you believe in God? And I said, yes, I did. They didn't ask which God I believed in. They just, did you believe in God? And I said, yes. I didn't tell them that the God I believed in had horns. So anyhow, I went through there's this whole process. You do a lot of memory work, they call it. You memorize all these ritual things. You have a mentor who's called your poster, who's an older Mason. And the guy that I had was a real, very kind guy, an executive in the power company. I can't remember the company. And he helped me memorize all this stuff. And then you go to second degree, and then you have a whole bunch of stuff to memorize. Just let me touch this briefly, because people ask me, well, at what point does Masonry start to look creepy? I mean, because there's tons of Christians that are Masons, literally thousands of them. And I just asked them, how can you do that? I mean, because when you start...
Christianity is the religion of the Antichrist. Christianity is a lawless Greek Jesus and not a law-keeping Yeshua HaMashiach of the Hebrew faith, the faith once preached, that which we are to earnestly contend for. So anything that Sunday worshiping Christians are doing is in stark contrast to the teachings of Yeshua, and they do the opposite, which that's why these Masons can also call themselves Christians, because they are practicing a Greek religion and not a Hebrew religion. Jesus is lawless and says we aren't under the law anymore according to Christianity. In the Hebrew faith, he says, do you think I came to do away with the law? I tell you I did not. He also says very plainly, have you never read the scriptures? The builders, the Freemasons, have rejected me as the cornerstone. These people have made Gadrael, who is Lucifer, who is currently called Saint Germain, on Mount Shasta. They have made him into the top of Freemasonry. That's what this cult is. Now let me go find the part where he's talking about the Masons and the Mormons raping children on the altar. Okay, right here is where he starts talking about the Mormons that he gets involved with, and this is where he ends up. It will be a couple minutes in from here, but this is about where he starts telling the story that will connect Bethel having the children raped on that altar.
You can look these up. They're probably available online. And they're about the dangers of the occult. And about how Lucifer is really the god behind all false religions. And I just looked at them and whatever, and threw them in the door in the closet and forgot about them. Well, anyway, the next day, there's a knock on the door, and we open it up, and it's Mormon missionaries. Never had one come before. And they always are, two of them. Two young men. And I remembered what this guy said, this Grandmaster Druid, back in 1973. We're now in 1980. And we joined the Mormon church because we thought that was where we were supposed to be. This was a sign from Lucifer. So I joined the Mormon church. I tried to be a good Mormon. I stopped doing dope. I stopped having orgies. I was just monogamous. And the only thing we did, because we had been led to believe by this Druid guy that the Mormons were white witches. And so we still did white witchcraft, but we didn't do Satanism anymore. We got all of that out of our lives. Went through the temple in the Mormon church, did all their secret rituals, which are very Masonic.
Well, let's actually stop there, because this is actually important. What kind of role did you have in the Mormon church? Because we just talked about missionaries coming to your house, and you said you joined. Can you explain a little bit, the progression and what kind of role you eventually got there?
Yeah, well, okay, you get baptized, and then after a year, if you, mind your P's and Q's and pay your tithing and all of that, you're made an elder. And that's what I was. I was an elder. And then later, I was made an elders quorum president. So that's like an administrative role right under the bishop. Now, understand, in the Mormon church, I don't know if it still is, but back then, this is in the 80s, a bishop, like most people think of a bishop as some really high-level guy, In the Mormon church, the bishop is the head of a local congregation. They call it a ward, W-A-R-D. And an elders quorum president is kind of like right under the bishop and takes care of administrative stuff. And I had gotten a temple recommend, which is like a card that allows you to go to the temple, because you're not allowed to go to the temple unless you're worthy. And at that time, we went to Salt Lake City, because that's like the Cadillac of Mormon temples, the Salt Lake Temple. And we went through the rituals, and that, I'll tell you, that's a whole story in itself. Do you want to get into that?
Of course, yeah.
Okay, well, so we go, now, mind you, we had information from this Grandmaster Druid. He said, give these words to the guy when you go into the Mormon temple. And they had a system which was probably kind of ahead of its time. This was, 1981, where you had this card and it had a code on it. Like nowadays, everybody's familiar with it, some kind of magnetic coding. They'd put it into the machine, and that would indicate that you're legit. And then we were told to say these words. And when we put these words into the computer after our card, the whole system, it crashed, the entire computer system.
A door is opening for you.
And so they didn't know what to do about that, so they got rid of the people that they could. They took us through the ritual, which involves it's hours long. It's kind of like the Masonic ritual on steroids.
I mean, you go downstairs, you get all basically naked. They wash your body, and it's done man to man, woman to woman. But they wash your body, they anoint your body with oil. You're given this magical temple garment, which you may or may not have heard of. And what's interesting is, just to back one step up, a lot of people don't know Joseph Smith was the founder of the Mormon Church. 1844, he was made a Master Mason in Nauvoo, Illinois. And after he was made a Master Mason, he kind of stole most of the Masonic ritual and created this temple ceremony. The whole thing is just bizarre, and I go into great depth. I have a video called Mormonism's Temple of Doom, a DVD that you can get that goes into all this in detail. But anyway, this is where it gets kind of odd, because after this is all over, we were invited to go meet with the president of the Salt Lake Temple, which is kind of a big deal. And he said, "What can I do for you?" And I said, "Well, we've been told," we didn't say by a druid, but we've been told that we need to talk to an apostle. Now, understand that in the Mormon Church, there's this hierarchy. There's the prophet, who's called the president, and then there's the first presidency, which is advisors and the prophet. Under them are 12 apostles. So he said, "Well, I'll see what I can do." So he arranged for us to go to the church office building and meet with one of the 12 apostles. At that time, it was.
Now, remember that we're talking about Bethel Church in Redding, and they also have the apostles and the prophets. It's another set of the same titles for people inside the Mason system that is also Mormon.
Elder James Faust. Believe it or not, that was his name, Faust, which is kind of weird. Faust is a very prominent name in the history of the occult. So we went there, up into the church office building, and to make a long story short, he said, "Well, what do you want to talk to us about?" I said, "Well, we had these dreams." And this is true. And again, back then, nobody knew what was going on in the Mormon temples. The stuff had not been made public in any way. A couple of years after this, a couple, Chuck and Dolly Sackett, put out a book called What's Going On in There. They were former temple workers, and they revealed the whole thing. But at this time, there was no anybody. And I said, we saw this ritual where there was this white altar with a satin covering, just like what's in the celestial room of the Mormon. And on it was this naked young girl, and everybody was around it chanting, "Hail Lucifer." And he said, this apostle guy, he said, "Well, I can tell you are very extraordinary people, and I bear you my solemn testimony." This is a big deal. If you ever talk to a Mormon, if they start saying, "I bear you my solemn testimony," this is like a big deal for them. That what you have said is true. And if you can come to Salt Lake and live here, we will find a place for you in the worship of the temple.
So I'm actually curious about one thing. So you talked about the Druid telling you that the Luciferian secrets were found in Freemasonry and in the Mormon Church, right? And you had been a Freemason at that point. You also went to the temple in Salt Lake. Can you talk about the similarities, if there are some, and what are they between Freemasonry and Mormonism?
Well, first of all,
let's get back to the thing that he just said. He said in the middle of their temple, they had an altar, and on that altar, a child was being raped.
So we went there, up into the church office building, and to make a long story short, he said, "Well, what do you want to talk to us about?" I said, "Well, we had these dreams." It's true. And again, back then, nobody knew what was going on in the Mormon temples. The stuff had not been made public in any way. A couple of years after this, a couple, Chuck and Dolly Sackett, put out a book called What's Going On in There. They were former temple workers, and they revealed the whole thing. But this time, there was no anybody. And I said, we saw this ritual where there was this white altar with a satin covering, just like what's in the celestial room of the Mormon.
So I put in Mormon altar Salt Lake Temple, and to the best of my understanding, with just a very quick search, I believe it is this spot right here, because I think this is the celestial room that he was just referencing. This picture also comes up in a Google, in a DuckDuckGo search for images that has that name, the Mormon temple connected to it.
Icon tools complete every repair without giving an inch. Only at Harbor Freight.
So you did the thing. Or maybe you're thinking about doing the thing. And now your brain...
The satin covering, just whole thing.
So let me rewind this, because I don't know if I just caught that or not, or if I just unpaused it. So what's going on in there? Chuck and Dolly Saget Mormon Temple ceremony. Los Angeles Times reports major changes in temple endowment. What's going on in there? This is all talking about the bad Mormon stuff that was going on.
To Pathway to Victory,
it's random in the
where the
middle
Bible
of what I'm
is
talking
the
about. This is a
centerpiece of our
sponsored ad.
program every
I was trying to
single
find
day.
Chuck
And for
Saget
good
Mormon
reason.
stuff,
For one,
and
we
this
know that the
guy's
Spirit of God
presentation
uses the Word of
is the same compass as his logo for Pathway to
regardless
Victory.
of its Christian veneer.
This same guy
of God to accomplish the will of God in our lives. But in order for that to happen, first we have to read the Bible. Today, I want to show you 4 ways to make
From the pulpit of the First Baptist Church of Dallas, Texas, this is Pathway to Victory with Dr. Robert Jeffress.
You guys see that compass? It's this compass. It's this compass. It's this compass inside of Bethel. That's Bethel's alabaster prayer house. According to the temple ritual of the stuff in Utah and the Masons, where they rape children on the altar, that's the altar in the middle of Bethel's alabaster prayer house temple. That's a Mason lodge. This is Bill Johnson up in Montana hunting with Tony Perrinson. I called Tony Uncle Tony since I was 5 years old. He built our house, our family house, for us in 1988. This is Tony. This is Bill Johnson. Tony used to manage Trinity Alps Resort. Bill Johnson's cult in Weaverville was like 15 minutes away. My parents in 1996 had lunch with Bill Johnson at the golf course in Weaverville because of Uncle Tony. He's like, this is how close this stuff works together. But Uncle Tony came from Montana and the Mormon cult. When I was around him, he was at a Calvary Chapel, Chuck Smith Sunday worshiping cult. It's another Freemason cult. But at Valley Christian Fellowship in the 1990s, Tony had us watch this video about the Mormons.
New 5-cheese mac and cheese is now...
Regardless of its Christian veneer, the basic tenets of Mormonism are in direct conflict with biblical Christianity. The following
and biblical Christianity is in direct conflict with the Hebraic faith of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I love you guys. Is this where the Bethel kids are getting raped, that we've been told are getting raped? It makes sense according to the testimony of this guy.
The stuff had not been made public in any way. A couple of years after this, a couple, Chuck and Dolly Sackett, put out a book called What's Going On in There. They were former Templar workers, and they revealed the whole thing. But at this time, there was no one in it, and I said, we saw this ritual where there was this white altar with a satin covering, just like what's in the celestial room of the Mormon temple. And on it was this naked young girl, and everybody was around chanting, "Hail Lucifer." And he said, this apostle guy, he said, well, I can tell you are very extraordinary people, and I bear you my solemn testimony. This is a big deal. If you ever talk to a Mormon, if they start saying, I bear you my solemn testimony, this is like a big deal for them. That what you have said is true. And if you can come to Salt Lake and live here, we will find a place for you in the worship of the temple.
So I'm actually curious about one thing.